This week on the Notorious Scoundrels podcast.
3, 2,
Fun.
Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a podcast focused on tactics and competitive play for Star Wars Legion. Hosted by Kyle Dornbos, Michael Barry, and David Zelenka, with Jay Shalansky, the man behind the glass.
Hello, and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast.
What's up, Jay?
Hi.
Hi, Jay.
So I'm joined by Kyle and David today, and I'm going to run this podcast for a little while, I guess.
Yeah, we can't even like talk about promos or anything without screwing up. So
Yeah. So I'm taking over this week. We kicked Mike off, and making sure Kyle's limited to a script, and we'll be good.
I have a set of responses that I'm going to read from a teleprompter here.
Yeah, very robotic responses.
Yeah. No, Mike couldn't make it this week. He will be back next week. But we got you, Jay.
Yeah, I figured I'd fill in. Give you guys somebody to tell that they're wrong about things. It'll be great. But I guess we'll start with housekeeping first. So as usual, the Fifth Trooper Network, as you guys I'm sure have seen between this podcast, my podcast, the blog that David and Kyle and myself and Evan this past weekend have been contributing to, as well as Mike is doing his Road to Worlds, right? His Road to Worlds blog. Right. So we're all providing content. We got tons of video content that we're planning as well. And all of that is because of listeners like you for supporting us on our Patreon page. And it's going great. If you haven't seen, go take a look. We are doing these new T-shirts at the mid or the high level. So at the end of the quarter, you'll get a Debacle T-shirt. I know a lot of people, I saw the other day, people that's kind of caught on the Debacle. So I'm hoping that it keeps going and you'll get a T-shirt out of it if you're one of our subscribers. So it'll be cool. And then also check us out on YouTube. Like I said, we're going to be doing a lot more content, video content on YouTube. We reached both of our levels on Patreon, which means the first one is monthly. We'll be doing a unit analysis video starting in September. And then also we'll be doing monthly a battle report, which we have planned as well. And our own Kyle is going to be in that first one.
Yep.
So that's pretty exciting. That was one of Kyle's robotic responses. Only one of 5 that we've approved ahead of time. So
I'm actually not even here. I'm just a soundboard.
Clicking buttons over on my side. Yeah. We actually tied Kyle up and gagged him, so he's no longer allowed to do this.
We threw him in the Imperial brig.
That's right. And then the last bit of exciting. So as you're hearing this, today is the last day for you to enter for that Clone Wars box set. We're giving it away. And so this evening around 11 o'clock is when the contest ends. And we will draw the winner and announce them Wednesday on our Facebook page, on the Fifth Trooper Facebook page. And I will literally mail it out that day. So there's a chance if you win and you're within the United States, I've made an offer that I will ship it outside of the United States as well. But if you're within the United States, there's a solid chance you could get it within 3 days. So I will ship it priority mail to you, to your home, and happy times. For those of you outside the United States, customs and stuff. So I don't know, a week. So, but you can go to thefifthtrooper.com/giveaway. And basically, we're just asking you to like and subscribe to all of our stuff so that we have followers and we feel loved. And
I made sure to tell my friend Hercules Rockefeller about this promo.
I think I saw that he signed up.
Yeah, awesome. I hope he wins.
She was.
It's weird. Does he live in the same area as you?
You know what? Actually, he lives in my basement. At the moment.
That's really nice of you to put your friend up like that.
Yeah,
It's the name for that part of your soul, your tabletop gaming soul.
So let's see what else we got here. Okay, so at Nova, the narrative events, do they still need rebels, Kyle? Is that still something
They
that
do,
they
yeah.
need? Okay.
They still need rebels.
So
they were short like 7 rebels.
you don't say. So they may well with the Tauntauns now, maybe, right? Maybe people will start going. Maybe.
There's just not a lot of actually, and we can talk about this in our news segment as far as Nova predictions are concerned, but there's actually just not a lot of rebel players like in Nova.
Right.
It's probably about 60-40 Empire, if not like 65-35.
Okay,
so.
if you're going to Nova, I'd like to issue a challenge to you. Okay, I want you to go to Nova, join this event as the Rebels. I want you to get as many Tauntauns as we can onto that table, and I want to see what the net effect is. I want to see what a horde of 30 Tauntauns looks like in this narrative event. That would just make my day if that happened. So if you're a Rebel player in the Virginia area, just join that event. Just do it, man. Just do it for the cause, for the rebellion.
That would be amazing.
That would be awesome. I would love to see that.
Yeah.
I unfortunately cannot do the narrative event. Otherwise, I would be signed up as a rebel.
Come on, Kyle.
I got like to come home to my kids and stuff, man.
Ugh, come on. You can do it. Also, speaking of Nova, so lists are due on Thursday of Nova.
Yep.
So next Thursday, a week and a half. And that is for Friday players as well, right, Kyle? So everybody's is due on Thursday.
Yeah, this is basically to prevent like people that are playing on Friday from scoping out the winning list on Thursday and making changes.
You naughty people, stop it.
Don't get me wrong. I'm sure that most people probably wouldn't do that, but it's better to be, I think, preventative. I'm sure that's what the TOs are looking for. So,
better safe than sorry.
Right. And there's no downside to asking for them early. So it's you can either email them. James, one of the TOs, posted a link in the Discord. I'm sure it'll make its way to Facebook too. Or you can just, at least if you're playing on Thursday, or if you're just going to be at the convention on Thursday, but you're playing on Friday, you can show up with a hard copy of your list. You just have to have it in before 10 a.m. on Thursday, the Thursday before Nova. So.
Well, and that's all we have for this episode. I spent all the budget on that robot response for Kyle, so we gotta move on now.
For Notorious Scoundrels, I'm David.
Beep boop, Kyle.
This text to speech app you got is really nice.
It's the most realistic I've ever heard.
All right, so let's move it on into news.
Welcome to In the News.
Welcome to Legion News. So basically, we're just going to keep coming over from housekeeping and continue talking about Nova. So Kyle, I think you're kind of our resident expert here on Nova. What do you got for us, buddy?
Well, I do live in Northern Virginia. I'm not sure if that makes me a resident expert on Nova.
It makes you both a resident and an expert, yes.
Yeah, so there are some people traveling for Nova. It's at a great venue here in Crystal City, which is right near the Pentagon. It is not in DC; it's outside of DC. It's by the airport, basically. So super easy to travel to. I know there are some people traveling, but definitely like a very significant portion of people that play at Nova are East Coasters, or even we have a fairly large community here. We had 20 people at our stores RPQ a few weeks ago, so I would expect to see a lot of our people from our local scene, which is a pretty competitive scene, but it also is, as we sort of alluded to earlier, very Empire heavy. I think in our last, not at the RPQ, but the tourney before that, we had like 12 people, and me and Gordon Chase were the only rebels.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it, I'm not anticipating just 2 rebels, but it's definitely going to be Empire heavy. So that's my prediction anyway.
So bring your snipers, because Pierce is pretty good against Empire right here.
Well, and bring your Tauntauns, which are really good against Empire gun lines.
That's also true.
Well, in that vein, so what do you guys think? What are your predictions for lists that you think will be there, where everything's at now?
Chronic Bosk.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a popular Empire model. It's actually pretty good against
So fill
Tauntauns.
that out for people who maybe don't know what else is in that list besides Krennic and Bosk. Well,
Krennic, Bosk, Death Troopers, couple snipers. Yeah, actually 3 snipers you can put in that list. You can also put medics in it as well, and like 4 DLTs, I think. Krennic with like improv.
So I've run this, and in fact, just a little preview. I ran this for our bat rep that we're going to be posting at some point. It's I think it's probably my favorite Empire list right now. You're right there, David.
Yeah, sorry. You have to cut that out.
You have to beep boop that.
You
have to. Anyway, so it is at least the version I run is Krennic Bosk, 3 snipers, 4 DLT storms. 2 of those DLT storms have medics. So it's 10 activations with Death Troopers, Bosk, Krennic, 2 medics, 4 DLTs, 3 snipers. It's a pretty nasty list. It can dish out some real range 4 firepower, but it also has some tools to deal with aggressive threats, specifically the Death Troopers, Bosk, and Krennic's command cards. Voracious Ambition and Deploy the Garrison are both excellent against both Tauntauns and Luke Sabine. And you can also win a shootout with a gun line. So it's a pretty versatile list. You're not going to have as many like anti-armor tools as like a Veer's Bosk list would, but you have enough certainly to deal with it. You got 4 DLTs, the Death Troopers, and Bosk. So
right. So like 5 DLTs if you include the Death Trooper DLT, right? And of course Bosk.
Well, right.
And,
right.
Bosk slang and weight is probably going to take a pretty good chunk out of any sort of armor they bring to start you off.
What do you anticipate any armor, or if you do, what types do you anticipate?
Double tank has been making a splash recently. That wouldn't surprise me. Also rotaries. I know, David, there were quite a handful of rotaries at Gen Con that did pretty well, right?
Yeah, a lot of folks were rocking Sabine Leia 2 rotary, which it's an all-rounder list. I just think that Wonder Twins does it a little better. But I see the reason that they're taking armor is that if they go up against the pure trooper spam style of Wonder Twins, 2 ATRTs can really mess their day up.
Yep.
In fact, Ethan, the guy that I played in the cut, beat a Leia Sabine like 11 activation 6z6 style list because the ATRTs were so dominant, and Leia Sabine has almost nothing that handles armor.
Yeah, you don't even have Luke to get in there and dice one up.
Nope, you took Sabine instead because you're trying to get, I don't know, a second medic or something.
Yep.
So you've totally sacrificed any ability to handle armor.
When I think
so. Sorry, I was going to make one more point.
Yep.
Rotaries are actually half decent against armor because they have crit surge, so they have a strong chance of actually getting something on the forcing that armor to make saves. Is what I mean to say.
So do you think then with that conversation, and I think we kind of fell out of this for a little bit, but bringing more well-rounded lists again kind of seems like the answer, right? Now that more stuff is coming back, like the rotaries, the tanks, the Tauntauns coming up, I think having more well-rounded lists, and you guys were talking last week about the linebackers for Tauntauns. It sounds to me like a well-rounded list is back in fashion.
Yeah, it's
largely
Tauntauns,
speaking, yes.
I would say Tauntauns specifically, trample gun lines, which the efficiency gun line, like if year 1 of Legion has been anything, at least going back to LVO, basically since snipers were out, it's kind of been the year of the efficiency gun line, 10, 11 activations, 2 characters, a bunch of core, and 3 snipers, or 2 snipers with like a special forces, something else mixed in there. But those lists get wrecked by Tauntauns.
Yeah. So Tauntauns are closing that era out officially.
Yeah. Now if you're running a list like that and you run up against something that's not Tauntauns, you're going to be in pretty good shape. But Tauntauns are kind of the scissor to the paper of Gunline.
Yep.
Which I think is a good thing.
So speaking of Tauntauns, and going back to predictions, is that you think that's going to be the heavy favorite for the Rebel list going into Nova? Is Tauntaun lists?
It's going to be interesting because we always talk about how you need reps with any list that you're going to run, and Tauntauns have only been out for, they will have been out for a month ish. So that's enough for some people if people can play multiple times a week. I definitely think people are going to be trying them. But as far as like seriously successful Tauntaun players, I don't know. We'll see. I know Mr. Lupo's going on Friday, and he's very good at getting reps in. So I wouldn't be surprised if he tries the new hotness.
I heard he might be mixing. He might be mixing them into his usual fare. We might see
the Sab fare.
Yeah, Tauntaun Saboteur list, which I'm just like, what a mess.
That sounds terrifying.
It sounds utterly terrifying.
After you're done dealing with the Tauntauns, it's like, oh, you spent all that time trying to kill my Tauntauns. Now I have 3 Sabs in your girl.
Yeah, or I have like 6 bombs on your side of intercept.
Right.
Yeah,
good luck with that.
Like that. I can't even, especially in his hands, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, something ridiculous like that. But no, triple Tauns is good. There's no question.
I mean, double Tauns is good too.
Do you think Sabine is still good?
Oh yeah, Sabine's still good.
Less good. Tauntaun specifically make her less good for a couple of reasons.
I think she's still good though. And I know of several like experienced Luke Sabine players that will be there. So I don't know if they're going to be shifting at all, but I would definitely expect.
I mean, we ended up talking about Tauntauns again, so I guess I'll go down this little tangent for just a second here. So the trouble that I have with Tauntauns, the primary thing is that Leia has that No Time for Sorrows move. And so if you end Sabine close to any Tauntaun, even with the Darksaber, she's going to have a pretty tough time breaking out. The Darksaber is only 5 dice. And Tauntauns on No Time for Sorrow's turn can get through dodges. That's most of your attack pool, eclipsed by dodges. So if you tie up Sabine in melee, not only is she not going to hit a target that's softer, she's also just probably not even going to do a whole lot of damage to those Tauntauns on top of it. And plus, they're going to be in melee with her. Now, you can force her to disengage. That's all well and good, but a disengaged Sabine is a vulnerable Sabine. So...
And you're wasting a turn with
exactly, Sabine, which is really damaging.
Unacceptable.
Yeah, it's unacceptable. Your opponent successfully charged your Sabine, and your response is to withdraw, which is like a huge loss in tempo, right? It's unacceptable, like you said. It really is.
Yep.
So anyway, that's a little tangent talking about why Sabine is having a hard time line backing against Tauntauns.
Well, and I think you pointed out 2 separate things there that are good for the listeners. You know, anybody who's specifically newer and is just picking up and listening to you guys, to 2 tactics right there, right? One is tie up Sabine in melee, if you can afford it. I got yelled at for calling it melee. A lot of people call it melee. I like melee. It just makes me feel better. So you tie her up. That's how you stop her from doing stuff. And like David said, basically make her ineffective if you can handle the hits that she's going to put out, especially if she doesn't have Darksaber. And then, your other thing that you just pointed out with Tauntauns about, man, getting 3 dodge tokens, that's a huge move. So you want to make sure you save that Leia Tauntaun combo for when it's important and you want to tie something up or you want to get into something and destroy it or how, whatever it may call for. But
yeah, that's
a really good move.
Yeah, it's just a crazy combination, especially with uplinks and tenacity. And if you have like a veteran with a fire support, piece, you can shift like 6 units up at once because you have 3 uplink Tauntauns. You got 2 targets with no time, and you have the coordinate from the veterans to the emplacement. So that's just it's just amazing how much free stuff you get doing that.
There's your Rebel entire Legion, right?
Yeah. You pay a 30-point tax for it, but hey, Leia's 90 points.
Well, at least 30 points. I would consider the veterans themselves attacks.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
But yes, you can definitely pull that
I
off.
mean, if you really want to go like hyper efficient, you can just cleanse the veterans out of that list and just add a couple Z's and be golden.
Right.
You know?
Like if you're quote unquote content to run only 2 tauntauns, you can do Leia 6Z6s, 3 snipers, and 2 tauntauns.
Yeah.
And that all
I
fits.
think you need to run 3. I don't think 2 is enough. I think 3 is better.
3
I think
bust.
3 are bust at this point. I think you have saturation at that point.
Isn't that interesting? Because that's how speeder bikes were for the Empire. Remember with the Veers?
I had that same thought earlier today. I was like, oh my god, heroes with 2 tauntauns are exactly like Vader double bike at the beginning of the game. They're just not quite enough of either column to be good. You know?
Yeah. That's interesting. So what do you guys, with all that conversation about what we think the lists are going to be, what do you guys see as favored to win?
Well, I don't know about favored to win. I will say, at least as far as what we'll see on Saturday, I bet we see a mix. I bet we see some tauntauns. I bet we see at least 1 Luke Sabine. I bet we see some Krennic Bosk. Maybe we'll see some Palpatine. And I'd wager we'll see some, wild card or 2 in there.
I have a strong feeling it's either shores aren't legal, right? Because they're not out yet.
Nope.
So then I have a strong feeling it's either triple tauntauns or it's Palpatine. One of those 2.
Do you guys, what do you think, what would be kind of an obscure list that we could potentially see? Could we see a Vader? Could we see a double tank list on Saturday?
Krennic Sabs.
Well, yeah,
it's not really obscure, but
situation.
it's off meta. It's
Yeah.
what I thought at Gen Con. It was definitely off meta, and it's definitely strong as hell.
Yeah, the amount of suppression that list doles out is ridiculous.
They bomb you a bunch, and then they hit you with Annihilation Looms for 2 more. And you're just. I had a Rebel unit with like 9 suppression on it at one point. It was horrifying. Yeah. Yeah. And that's just from Saboteur bombs. It wasn't even from AL.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Mike runs Vader, our co-host Mike.
Oh yeah.
So
Vader Boss, can't forget that.
Yeah, he had some success at the RPQ, right?
If by some success you mean he won it, then yes.
It's too bad dewbacks aren't legal, because I would then say Vader dewbacks.
Yeah, that would be funny.
Yeah, Vader dewbacks with new ways to motivate them. They're like super snows.
Oh,
And then they get tenacity, and then when you hit them with that new ways to motivate them, they take the wound that triggers tenacity. So then you're up in their face with like 4 red and 3 white with hit surge. It's pretty good. If you didn't make it, you flame them because you have a flame rifle.
Yeah, what's the quick tangent to dewbacks? What's the like threat range on a dewback with new ways to motivate them flamethrower? It's like range 4, I think, isn't it?
It's ridiculous, yeah, because it's an ATRT base, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's what 2.5 inches.
It is now. It's supposed to be post debacle. It is now.
It's supposed to be an ATRT size base.
You're right. It's supposed to be. God, when it was an ATST.
So let's math this out real quick. Movement tool, speed 2 movement tools 5 inches.
Yeah. So 10 inches for the movement.
Well, if you're double moving. If you're double moving from new ways, it's 15, and then the width of the base 3 times is 7.5, so it's 22.5 plus 6 inches for range 1, 28.5. So that's further than range 4.
It's range 4.
Yeah,
you can just launch the dewback across the map.
Oh my God.
Yep.
And flame them.
Yeah, good luck with that, Rebel.
Wow, I'm sad I didn't run that for Team League. Huh. This is pretty good.
Oh, hey, your dewbacks are way back there. I'm fine. I'm gonna put my unit out here, and the next thing you know, they're just hi.
Oh, you have no idea.
These crazy lizards just running across the whole board to get you. Oh man, that's gonna be great.
28.5 inches.
Seems legit.
So
don't they have some ridiculous amount of health, like 8?
Yeah.
No, they only have 6.
Oh, they have 6? Oh, that's too bad. Should have had 8.
I mean, they have armor
Oh,
1
well.
and red saves.
That I still need health.
So I think we mentioned this a couple episodes ago, right? But the terrain at Nova is going to be different than it was last year, and ideally better.
Yeah, it's going to be better. They basically, Nova put out a statement essentially saying that it's going to be better.
What do
So,
we do? We
yeah,
have any
it's
predictions on what we think is
there.
going to be there?
Well, I mean, in the document, they say that they're looking at more line of sight blockers to counter things like unlimited range weapons, aka snipers. Now, more line of sight blockers than last year would be not a super high bar. So, like, it's hard to say what this means in practice. It sounds like they've definitely been paying attention to the more recent events that have had kind of what we're starting to get more used to as far as terrain quantity and quality is concerned, and they're thinking hard about it. So, like, if I were to say more like Nova last year or more like LVO or Adepticon, I would say it's going to be more like LVO or Adepticon.
Which is a good thing.
Which is a good thing, yes.
A very good thing.
Yeah, as far as quantity and quality of terrain is concerned.
So here's a little side tangent for you on terrain. Do you see us taking the next step with terrain where it's going to become even a little bit more dense as far as like requirements and stuff? Because I still feel like if you base it off of the requirements in the RRG, I don't think there's enough. I don't think 25% is enough.
I agree. I mean, you look at Worlds. World was 35%, right? And I think that was fine. Now, it was like nobody played a tank at Worlds, but if you did, it might have been a little difficult to get around the table. But as far as like games with lots of troopers in them, it was super interesting. It was balanced. An Empire player won, obviously. So it's not like more terrain just inherently favors rebels. More terrain just makes for more interesting games. Otherwise, you're just playing checkers on a different table.
Exactly. It seems terrible. I was going to add that you can hit the 35 to 40% threshold, but not actually preclude tank movement. It's possible. You just have to ensure that there is some percentage of your terrain that's like low-lying barricades or low-lying cover, which doesn't impede the progress of a tank. And that's not impossible to hit that threshold while doing that.
Yeah, and actually, scatter terrain is something I want to talk about, because one thing I have noticed, even with the advances the community has made with terrain, is that there are often, you still get maps that are kind of light on scatter terrain, things like barricades and boxes and hedges, like things that you can put trooper units behind and they can shoot over, but that doesn't block line of sight. I feel like tables have been great about adding more line of sight blockers, but there's sort of sometimes you get this effect where you're either like completely out of sight or you're in the open.
I'll say I had one of those tables at Gen Con. It was a remix of the World's desert tables. There were a lot of those pieces that were just, you were either fully in or fully out. And not a whole lot of barricades in between. It was still a perfectly fine table to play on, but it was a little bit annoying, especially as a rebel.
Right, because like trooper units need like a thing in the lanes where they can move up to that thing and stand behind it and shoot.
Yeah, I used to call that usable space.
Right.
Because it was so dangerous to actually, and it's actually more dangerous nowadays because you have things that are, I don't know, throwing a giant haymaker at you, 6 hits, different DTs or from a tank, you got to protect yourself. And if you don't have stuff to protect yourself, that part of the board is essentially closed.
Yeah, right. And I would say, we saw this kind of at Neo as well, and Kyle, you were there helping us out with it. As I found myself doing the same thing as I was building tables, or like some of the other tables that I had that other people built. They were these great buildings or line of sight blocking, or we did all this great stuff. But then you're right, we just left out scatter. And so I think the recommendation for everyone would be like, hey, those barricades are really actually good. You might as well just paint them up, make them the style of your table and just toss them on the table because you're going to need them. They come with the game anyways, so you might as well just go ahead and use those.
Right. I think every table needs at least like 6 to 8 barricades plus 4 to 6 things that are like barricades.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like boxes, so boxes are great because you can call them light cover. Barricades are always heavy cover. So if you just have like 12 barricades on your table, that's not going to be very interesting.
No, it won't be.
But if you've got some boxes, that's a piece of like linear scatter terrain that you can call light cover if they're not like super heavy duty looking boxes. So
oil drums, cylindrical pieces of terrain too. Yeah.
You don't see like Star Wars is not, World War II style terrain. So you don't see things like hedges or sandbags or anything like that. That's sort of like naturally you could call light terrain.
We should start seeing more hedges with Naboo tables.
That's true.
Because that's actually like legit, like gardens like and palaces.
Yeah,
bushes and stuff like that. That stuff is easy to call light cover.
Yeah, I was also thinking of, those sometimes, like if the police are trying to block off a road for like an event, they have those wooden kind of barricades that they put up, which is just like basically a couple 2x4s to some legs. Yeah. Those could work in the Star Wars universe too, where it's, hey, we're just trying to block off this area and we just needed something simple to put up there. And then you could call that light terrain.
Yeah, totally. And, maybe the Star Wars equivalent, I've seen some of these floating around are like those hollow barricades.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Not HOLOW, HOLO barricades, where they have like this clear acrylic piece and then it's in and, it sits on some kind of thing that props it up. Those are really cool. And you could very easily call those light.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's take a little dip into Legion 101, shall we?
It's time for Legion 101. Class is in session.
All right. So welcome to our Legion 101 segment. I think you guys thought it would be a good idea. David had this great article last week on suppression.
Thank you.
I loved it. And so I think it's kind of cool for you to also on the podcast maybe expand on that a little bit and talk to suppression.
Well, hello, suppression. Not just
you greet suppression when it walks through the door. You say hi.
When suppression gets put on you, you say how many tokens. No, for real though, suppression is extremely important. I mean, actions are. I'm going to laugh when I say this, knowing that tauntauns exist. Actions are relatively precious in the game of Legion. Every unit in the game, generally speaking, is going to get 12 actions. Except for tauntauns, who are generally speaking going to get like 30. I guess my point is that suppression is going to rob you of those limited actions, and actions are a resource like any other resource in a game, and you need to guard your resources, and you need to plunder your opponent's resources. So it's a good idea to deal suppression to your opponent's units by shooting them, not necessarily just for casualties, but to rob them of actions. It's a really good idea to kill off unactivated units, because not only do you do damage to the unit before it activates, so it might have less guns to shoot you back with, may also not even be able to shoot you because it's losing an action. And I think I mentioned in this article that you should always look for opportunities to prevent your opponent from moving and shooting. If you see that your opponent would have to move to shoot you, you can see that they are going to need 2 actions to attack. And if you strip them of one of those actions, they won't attack you. And no matter what quality dice, the best defense dice are the ones you don't roll, because it's never a question about whether you're going to take wounds or not. So I guess core point 1, always be looking to shoot your opponent's unactivated units, because it's really effective. Core point 2, you're going to need to guard your resources. Like I mentioned, you're going to need to have some ability to handle suppression in your list. Most of the time, that's going to be through Inspire. So if you take Leia or Veers or any of the officer specialist upgrades, you're going to add some Inspire to your list. That's really good for getting rid of suppression on other units. You can also think about investing in more courageous units that don't lose actions to a single suppression token. Officers increase the courage value of a squad. You can also consider taking Death Troopers, Guards, Commandos, Pathfinders, Wookiees, things that are less vulnerable to being suppressed. You should also think about investing in a commander that has a high courage value. Luke is the quintessential Courage 3 commander for the Rebellion. Jyn Erso is a less common commander, but she has the same ability to give that Courage 3 bubble so things don't panic. Empire, of course, has access to Vader. Vader is like number one at causing units not to panic because he's got that dash courage value. I think I mentioned also in the article that if a unit sees Vader nearby and even has a thought about fleeing, he's probably going to get killed by Vader before he makes it halfway off the battlefield. I think Vader would just force choke him to death on the spot because Vader's got no time for that kind of failure. So yeah, I mean that was a lot of info just there, but you need to steal your opponent's resources. That is, take away their actions, guard your own resources, protect your own actions, and take those upgrades and take those units that allow you to do that.
Yeah, and David, part of your article, and I really like this because this is something that always runs through my mind when I'm playing as well, is valuable targets as far as who's activated and who hasn't, and making sure that, it may not seem like a lot, like you're like, oh shoot, I didn't wound them, but you suppress, you're adding suppression to them, which is, taking that resource that you said. And I think that's always something you always want to be aware of when you're playing, is going, okay, what is the order here that stuff has gone? What hasn't activated? Where can I kind of mess with my opponent's army here through suppression?
Right. It's being sort of, it's being a little bit more aware of the overall state of the board, and like having good vision of the board. And also just being willing to ask your opponent, hey, what hasn't activated over there? Because I can't tell that your tokens are a mess over there. I don't know exactly what's happening. So can you help me out? That's always good to ask your opponent that information. To the point though, you're basically trying to figure out where your shots are going to land. That's going to be the most effective. And there's a couple ways to do that. One is by, of course, doing the math about defense dice and cover, which, Kyle has done a lot of that already. And then the other math equation is counting, what that unit is going to end up doing when it activates. If you're going to suppress it, you'll take away an action. If you're going to panic it, you'll take away all of its actions. In fact, it'll have to perform negative actions, like harmful actions. And so, just having vision of the board, having an awareness of the order of operations about, if I do, if I can suppress that unit, they won't shoot my other unit, and then this unit gets to move twice, or just, things like that. A hypothetical series of events in the game, which are then condensed into what's called a line in strategy.
So David, what are your thoughts on, like, if you have opportunity, let's say a particular hero, let's say Han, for instance,
Sure.
right? Like, he's going to cause some trouble, and you have opportunity to maybe suppress him out, to where he's going to panic. Where's the value, marker in that when gauging value for suppression?
Well, so there's a couple of benchmarks here. One is you just want to, your first benchmark is, can I suppress him, right? And so if you're looking at the board and you say, well, if Han gets a move, he's going to put multiple targets in range 2. That's bad, right? Han's got that great range 2 pistol. And so you're saying, well, if I suppress him, he doesn't get 2 actions to move shoot. So I'm going to put some effort into suppressing him. if he's got a fair number of suppression tokens on him already, like say 3+, he's courage 2. You're going to look for commanders nearby that are boosting his courage to 3. Luke is 1. You're very familiar with Flyboys. But you're going to look to see what his total courage is, whether that's 2 or whether that's 3 or whatever. And you're going to do a little bit of math. Hopefully you've memorized some of these things beforehand using Kyle's suppression tables, because he's got tables for you that let you know what the chances are of a unit keeping its suppression token after it rallies. And you say, okay, well, if I can panic him, that's probably good. But you do have to look at the end result of what that is. You have to sort of weigh it against the cost of all other potential actions. But generally speaking, it's pretty good to panic something like Han, just because he's such a good unit. And he's also like a cornerstone of your opponent's list. He's a hero. He's got a bunch of command cards. He does a heck of a lot of damage if he's left untouched. So you just have to sort of think about the relationship between the hero that you're targeting and what he could do if you leave him alone. But if he's not suppressed, get him suppressed, because he doesn't have keywords like charge or relentless. And he doesn't have abilities like force reflexes where he can just take actions anyway. He's a hero that needs all his stuff.
And I feel like, too, there's kind of 2 different strategies, right? So there's the immediate need of suppression. Like, I need to suppress this unit now so that they only have the 1 action. But then I think there's like a 3-round kind of suppression strategy that's going, okay, I know this is going to be a big deal. Maybe round 2 for intercepted transmissions, or maybe going into round 3, I know this is where this is going to kind of turn the tide and change things. So maybe I start laying suppression down on Han now. Like somebody that's good with that is Krennic, right? Yep. And just start like adding suppression now so that I can maybe just keep him bogged down for a few rounds, and then maybe panic him during round 3 or 4.
That's an extremely effective strategy against heroes like Han and even General Grievous with their limited courage value of 2, who don't have easy ways of dumping that suppression. Now, obviously, you can force your opponent to recover. Recovering is nice for your opponent because they can just dump their suppression, but it slows them down, because not only did you steal an action by suppressing them, now it's gotten so bad that they have to waste their whole activation getting rid of your suppression. So recovering just for suppression is super negative, generally speaking, unless there's some other like exhausted upgrade they're trying to get back.
Well, and I like that you said that, because I know recently we had a tournament or something, and somebody had done that where they got a bunch of suppression on somebody, and they weren't panicked, but they were definitely suppressed, and they just recovered, and they were like, oh, and I was like, no, man, like that's really good. Like, don't sigh and discuss. Like, you just ate up their entire turn that round. So
they might
that was great.
They might as well have been panicked, because they didn't get any actions.
Right.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about Han and Grievous, as far as like if you're using Han and Grievous, there's some really important ways, even though they don't have any have a low courage and they don't have any natural suppression removal tools. 2 tools that they can utilize, both of them, are strict orders and endurance.
Mm-hmm.
Both of which I think, if you're taking Grievous, and you've obviously separatists have very cheap core units in the B1s, you're going to have the points where you can take both strict orders and Grievous. I'm sorry, both strict orders and endurance on Grievous. Mm-hmm. And that means not only are you picking up 2 suppression a turn in the end phase, which means that suppression from turn to turn is going to be hard to stick, but you're also Grievous usually has a face-up order token because he's your commander. So you're usually picking up a suppression off him also when he activates with strict orders, which means that your opponent needs 3 suppression on him at a given time to make sure that to even have a chance of him losing an action.
Yeah, it's an 11-point investment ultimately, so it's a really cheap one, right, when you think about what it can give you.
Right, because he's your centerpiece.
Right, it's like insurance in a sense. You're taking out insurance on this 200-point unit. to make sure it works.
Right, and especially in his case with separatists, where they can give an order to every unit in their army, basically. Droids are not affected themselves by suppression as far as being suppressed is concerned, but they do still have to worry about panic.
Yes.
And it's not uncommon for Grievous to be near the end of the game out of command range of some of your B1s, because he's potentially, doing the Luke thing where he kind of plows into your opponent's lines. So you might have a situation where 2 courage on a B1 is a problem. And if you're running strict orders and you're coordinating to those B1s, you're going to be able to pick up that suppression, because they're going to have a face-up order token. It's basically like slapping Return of the Jedi on all of your command cards.
Grievous is also a commander that likes to run ahead, I think, just because he's a melee character at heart. Like, that's his strongest position. And plus, he needs to run ahead because his 1-pip is, that area of effect attack. So he wants to dive right into the heart of the enemy army and just unleash that 1-pip on them. And so he is going to run away from the main body of your force, and his courage level may be pushed up to the point where panic becomes a threat in the backfield. So strict orders is definitely a great thing. I think it just gets its value just being put on him, but you are going to get value in those other areas, like Kyle mentioned.
Yep. And then on Han, endurance is a great upgrade just because he doesn't have a lot of natural other upgrades for training choices. Like, you don't need to give him Hunter because he's thrown 2 red dice.
Yeah, Hunter's a waste.
So endurance is a great candidate for him. Tenacity.
Some people say tenacity Han,
doesn't do Han any good.
Sometimes he rolls well. Sometimes.
And suppression is his biggest weakness, besides pierce weapons.
And being in melee, yeah.
Right. So it's a cheap 6-point way to mitigate that. Sabine is another great target for endurance for the same reasons. She needs all of her actions. She doesn't have charge or relentless, or ways to cheat on actions, essentially. So she needs both actions every turn, and you can make it unproductive for your opponent to try and pile suppression with. She's
also got Symbol of Rebellion, which is like one of the best cards for handling suppression in the game. It's just a free recover when she activates, so you can actually hold on to it until late in the turn and just free yourself. I think I saw someone clear like 7 suppression off her with Symbol once. It was like, that's brilliant, man. Like, such value.
Oh yeah, it's a value town. You can do the same trick with Imperial Discipline with Imperials.
Yep. That speaks to having a method of handling it in your army.
Yep. One last thing to mention with suppression is to not forget, because sometimes it's important, that it gives your opponent cover.
Yes, don't forget that.
This is relevant in situations where you intend to shoot a unit multiple times. Maybe you have say you have like a Z6 squad and a sniper that are both lined up to shoot a unit.
That's in open or light cover.
Well, let's just say the open, because if you shoot that unit with the sniper first, you're going to give cover from the Z6 shot.
Okay.
Right? But in that instance, if you shoot them with the Z6 first, the sniper has sharpshooter 1. They're going to ignore that suppression token for cover purposes. So, same with situations like this is super common with Sabine. Like on her explosions turn, suppose you're in a position to gunsling or something and also blow it up with bombs. You want to do the gunslinger first if they don't already have suppression tokens, because the bombs are going to give it, suppression cover from your gunslinger.
Yep.
So
because bombs have blast and ignore it.
Correct. So basically, so shoot it first and then blow it up.
Right. So the general idea, is shoot those units which don't ignore cover first, then shoot the units that have tools to ignore it.
Correct.
There's only one case where I think the reverse might be true, and that's sniping something that's already in light cover, just because snipers have a low dice pool, and it's possible, especially with rebels, that white die lags behind. I think it's worth getting that one hit through on Pierce just to guarantee the wound. But that's the only like edge case where this order might be reversed for benefit. But otherwise, shoot your normal guys first, then shoot the things that ignore cover.
How do you feel? Do you feel like that's good for suppression?
Oh, I think that was a lot of information, man. I'm just going to recommend people read that article I wrote because it's got a lot of the fundamentals. And actually, it is 101. The next 101 article that I'm going to be producing is, it's related. It's a little bit tied into that first one. It's about how to count. Counting is a really important skill in Legion.
One.
Yeah. One action. It's really important to learn to count in Legion, and we're gonna learn how to count actions and potential actions together, as well as pips, and probably there's a third thing I did. Oh, counting activations. Duh. Okay.
Love it. And that's all at thefifthtrooper.com.
So, like, if you're playing in an important game and your opponent still has like 5 units left to go, you should not go with Luke and engage an unactivated core unit near those 5 units.
Bravo.
Is that what you're saying?
Bravo.
Perfect.
You'd be surprised what I see.
Speaking of that, I think we can move on into competitive and tactics now.
Get ready for advanced tactics.
So, competitive tactics. We're going to be talking about using some of the new upgrades that are in the Clone Wars core set and potentially the upcoming unit expansions for legacy units. Who wants to start? Which one of you competitive tacticians would love to start here?
Let's start with link targeting array. So there are 5 upgrades we're going to talk about in here, and we'll just list them off here real quick. Link targeting array, aggressive tactics, electro binoculars, smoke grenades, and force guidance. These are all upgrades from the Clone Wars core set that can be helpful to Rebels and Imperials. And let's talk about how. So link targeting array. This is only on a vehicle or an emplacement, but when they get a face-up order token, they get a free aim token. And it's what, 5 points?
5 points, takes a comm slot. So you can't run an uplink and this unless you have 2 of those, but still pretty good. You said it was only on emplacements and vehicles, correct? Okay.
Correct, yep.
So it's really meant for ATRTs, tanks, speeder bikes,
E-webs.
E-webs, yes.
E-webs. Yeah, so usually, it's nice insofar as vehicles especially, and to some degree emplacements, are units that you both want to have orders on, and based on how you set up your list, you're usually prioritizing them for orders anyway. Like if you're running 1 or more tanks, that means the tanks are the focus of your list, and you're probably running them with Veers, and he's going to be giving them orders. Because you want your orders on your most important pieces, and vehicles are likely to be that. If you're running an ATST, that ATST is going to be your focus piece, so you're going to want to give it orders anyway. So you're essentially paying 5 points for a free aim token every turn, which is pretty amazing.
I mean, it gets really crazy when you consider that a lot of these vehicles, especially the Imperial vehicles, have ranged 4 weapons attached to them. So, if you're already in range, you put an order on the tank and then you aim shoot. That's 2 aims. And then you put Veers behind that. Veers giving an aim with spotter. So now you have 3 aim tokens stacked onto your vehicle. You're probably going to do some damage. Like the number one complaint, I think, of vehicle users was that they would get to a position, roll their attack pool, and then come up with like nothing because they had to spend time getting into position and they couldn't shoot with an aim. But this like completely mitigates that. You're going to have an aim wherever you go as long as you have an order on you for 5 points. I mean, that's excellent. That automatically boosts the output of whatever vehicle you're taking it on. And then you pay like 10 more points for the hammers pilot. If you're an Imperial, you're sitting pretty. If you're like a tank with a rifle pintle, that's like 8 dice at range 4 with 3 aims behind it with hit surge. So you're feeling pretty good about that attack pool.
So for me, and I know Kyle is not a fan of eWebs, but I am a huge fan of eWebs. And when I saw link targeting array, the thing I was thinking about was I used to run this Palp eWebs list, and I was just thinking about how good that would be with that, like being able to give them the order, the aim, they could move standby, or Palp could pull the strings. I mean, there's so many things that you could do with an eWeb now. Oh man, like that's pretty exciting for me. Or give them the order, pull the strings. They'll have the aim, so then they can either shoot or move up, and then they're that much closer for their next round for their activation to then move and attack with the aim, or aim and attack depending on where you are. It just
the same goes.
Well, it opens up, like you were saying, with the tanks, right? Like there's just so many more options now.
Right, and it also solves the major dilemma of tanks, which is you're taking this unit not necessarily to capture objectives, but just to be a huge beat stick, and it's going to fulfill that function even more well than it did previously, because it's got all this ability to fix its dice.
Little tangent, but because you said that with the tanks, do you think that there is a point where, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but tabling your opponent is a realistic move or goal instead of playing to the objectives?
Yes, because there is a mistaken belief that killing your opponent's units is not playing the objectives.
Right. I don't think it's realistic to expect to actually table your opponent. That's super rare in a competitive Legion game. But I think it's realistic to want to kill as many of your opponent's units as possible, because ultimately most objectives are about counting unit leaders, with the exception of recover, in one fashion or another.
Unit leader.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Right. So, if you can kill units, like, you are playing the mission. If you're playing intercept or key positions,
right? You control, as a certain gentleman once told me at Adepticon, I get ahead on attrition to control the flow of the game, and that is that's why you bring this big ol' punching tank, because you're trying to blow up a couple of your opponent's units before they get too far.
For those of you that are wondering what that noise was, David just punched his screen when he said tank.
Yeah,
he got very aggressive. He's thinking about fielding those tanks. I think I can feel him turning to the dark side.
I'm very passionate about this game, Joe.
And tanks.
And tanks, specifically.
Tanks. Who doesn't like tanks? I mean, if you hate tanks, I think you hate Star Wars, right? Yeah. I mean, ...
Anywho, so aggressive tactics. Right. Speaking of aggression,
yeah, let's go to aggressive tactics. So aggressive tactics is a 10-point command upgrade, and the gist of this upgrade, I don't have the text in front of me, but the gist of it is, if the unit with this upgrade is the nominated commander, you can put up to 4 surge tokens on units with face-up order tokens. So if you have, let's say you have General Grievous, right? This is the seminal example. General Grievous gives an order. He plays push. He gives an order to himself and an order to his B1 dudes. And all the B1s, propagate the order through their army due to coordinate droid trooper. Now you have your choice, because you nominated Grievous as your commander. Grievous has aggressive tactics. You now have your choice to put 4 surge tokens, one surge token on up to 4 of these units. So you're probably going to give, a surge token to Grievous, and then 3 surge tokens to the units that are most likely to shoot, because droids need the help on offense way before they need the help on defense, generally speaking, because their save is so bad and they have a hard time getting cover. But
and they're only 6 points, so if
who cares?
Whatever.
So you want to do the extra hit, because that extra hit's more valuable. Usually, you have to speaking of counting, use your judgment. If you're going to convert a surge, they're just going to get gobbled up by cover. Why spend it?
Well, and the other thing too, just real quick with surge tokens generally, is what's the expression? A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Like if you have a situation where you give a surge token to a B1 unit, and before they get a chance to shoot, they get shot, and then you roll a surge on the save, just spend the surge token. Because there's no guarantee that you're even going to roll a surge on their attack.
Exactly.
So same goes for like shore troopers. If you're giving an order to shores and they get shot.
Same goes for medic charges. Just spend it.
Right.
If that unit's about to get blown up, just spend the damn thing. Get it out of your hand.
Right.
But how does this apply to Clone Wars or non-Clone Wars units, I guess, is the question, though, we're trying to answer.
So I think it is much better, generally speaking, for Empire than Rebels, just because Rebels have so many units already that natively surge. Z6s could use the help on offense, but like you're never wanting to give orders.
Yeah, literally the only turn I could see giving orders to Z6s is like covering fire. And that's like once a game, if ever.
Right. So you're probably not taking this upgrade with Rebels. I actually can't think of a build off the top of my head where you would really want it. Which is
sorry about the barbecue.
Yeah, you're giving the ATRTs surge on defense.
That's moderately scary.
I can see that.
Moderately.
But also points are so tight in that list. I don't know if 10 points to give your RTs defensive surges. I mean,
it's not just take an astromech.
That's right. Yeah, astromech for 8.
They're 2 health, so
But that's interesting. I love the sorry about the barbecue list, so I'm gonna have to play around with that a little bit.
It's on the entrance turn, right? Because that's when you pop all your uplinks.
Well, I mean, most turns, Hana's, at least in that list, Hana's your only commander, so pretty much every turn you're going to be able to give surge tokens to ATRTs.
Help keep them alive longer.
Except for right. Except for reckless diversion. But unless you pop your uplinks on that turn. But anyway, aside from that example, I think this is a lot more useful for Empire. Like shore troopers benefit in both directions from it.
Yeah, they have no native surge.
Right, they're probably the best candidate for it. Even regular stormtroopers, like surge on defense is not terrible. It's pretty good. Now again, they have the same problem as rebel troopers, which is that it's tough to get them orders, and you don't generally want to do that, except on your, if you're using coordinated fire. But I think shore troopers are, like, if you've got a build that centers around shore troopers, they're a great candidate for it. IRG, they don't surge in either direction, and obviously they can guardian. So like, basically you're giving your guardian unit death trooper saves.
Seems good, man.
Seems pretty good.
Basically, like I have a 66% chance now to negate this damage on one result, which is pretty good.
Yep. Snipers, the Imperial snipers, who you often are giving orders to.
Oh god, they would love to have this ability to surge.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about essentially.
Yeah, every time it rolls hit surge now becomes a hit through cover. Oh man, that's rough.
Yep. Yeah. Ugh. So I think this is great for like Veers or Krennic lists that are built around shore troopers, and also for just about any Palpatine list.
Yeah, I love the idea of Palpatine with this card. Just the fact that guards are, they're already really good, and Palpatine just makes them even better. And now Palpatine's like the king of making them even better because he's got not just the double tap, he's also got the surge token now. And it's cheaper than Force Guidance, and it's also you're always going to have the face up because of the entourage. So even when you play Given to Your Anger, you can put a surge token on this guard.
Yep. And if you're running, if you can afford to fit like a shore and a mortar in there, even just one, you get the free order from Entourage. Obviously, you want to give an order to Palpatine, but that means like even if you don't uplink those shores on your push turn, on your assault turn, And on your entire Legion turn, they're getting an order, and they're getting a name token from their unit ability and then aggressive tactics. So it's also great for that, a common tactic that Eric Reha loves is to play entire Legion on first turn and get full control over all 3 of your snipers and Palpatine, and then essentially you have 4 snipers between the 3 snipers and pull the strings that you can have go immediately back to back to back to back
with surges now.
And now they have surges. So
that is so dirty.
Yeah, if your opponent has any exposed units, good luck with that.
Good night.
So yeah, I really like aggressive tactics on Palpatine.
Well, then to segue that a little bit, adding Force Guidance on too.
Yeah, you could do 6 surges if you want.
Right. I mean, so one of the reasons, so the points are tight in a Palpatine list. I've been trying to put together some lists because I've been on a little bit of a Palp kick, which we'll get to. Put together some post-Nova top lists with these upgrades and with Shores. Points are definitely tight, but these are both great upgrades on Palp. He doesn't really get a lot of use out of his force slots except for anger typically, because he's rarely close enough to use force push or choke. And he already has a natural surge defensive save, so reflexes, although free dodge every turn is nice, is not worth 15 points. So guidance actually, besides being relatively affordable at 10 points, gives him something to do with his Master of the Force ability every turn. Because he's usually in the middle of your army, who's where you want to give the surge tokens. And you field him with a lot of units that need them, like snipers and IRG. So I really like Force Guidance on him. I think if you can only take one, you're probably still taking aggressive tactics because that happens at the beginning of the turn for free. But definitely if you can fit in the 10 points, besides anger, I think Force Guidance is easily his second best force.
Yeah, man, I'm still fixated on AT with entire Legion because, man, that is one kick-ass first turn. Not only do you get to delay with your snipers back to back, they have surges and you're gonna kill stuff. You'd have to roll pretty bad not to kill stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right, so let's talk about electro binoculars.
Veers with spotter 3 seems good, but even better, a 58-point Imperial officer with spotter 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, this is another upgrade that's probably a lot better for Empire than for Rebels, because it stacks with existing spotter, and at the moment there aren't any Rebel units with spotter. But yeah, you can increase Veer's spotter effectiveness by 50% or double it on an officer, essentially. So I think, was it Beefcake that was running 2 officers each with electro binoculars?
He was, and I called that list 4 eyes, but someone pointed out to me it's actually 8. So it doesn't actually work.
Not everything has to work, man. Sometimes just the brand sticks,
That's true. So it's two officers with electro. It's Bosk. It's a heck of a lot of DLT storms and a heck of a lot of snipers and just a ton of aims being passed around. And Inspire 2 as well. So I mean, it's got some advantages over Veers. It's got 2 command bubbles, for example. The trouble is that officers are so fragile and they're easily bountied. Easier to bounty than Veers by a fair bit, actually. So, right, they don't have their own command cards natively, so you lose on max firepower, discipline, all that stuff.
But maybe where I think it helps though is bringing, if you did a modified middle management with Bosk, and you did an Imperial officer with the binoculars instead of Veers, and then you have Krennic and Bosk, that would actually be really good.
That could be pretty sweet. Or you take Krennic with the binos.
Yep.
So I think you just give him the Krennic.
Yeah, so now when Krennic activates, he has something to do other than just move.
Yeah, he often spends most of his time just pissing on a wall anyway. So
yeah, so if he's babysitting the Death Troopers with an aim token, that's even better.
Yeah, because Death Troopers both really need and really benefit from aim tokens. And if you're firing at range 4, you're not going to be able to take the aim action every turn because you got to recover. But
Yeah.
if you got your boy Krennic there, just feeding him aims every turn, I think that's a great upgrade in a Krennic.
Yeah, lets your Death Troopers take aim shots while recovering, which is pretty dope.
Yep.
Like this idea that like you're investing 100 and some odd points into a unit, again, it's like protecting your investment, right? Because you're gonna make the shot, and if your shot doesn't work, what the F am I doing with this 100+ point unit? I should just take more stormtroopers.
Well, and with that, like you're also looking at a deploy the garrison turn with potentially 3 aim tokens.
Yep. Because Krennic can just pass and they have one from ready and then they can aim themselves. Yeah. Ugh. Oh man, I want you to do that with the short range config.
Oh my god, yeah.
Oh yeah. A lot.
Walk in with the short range config and re-roll 12 dice with 3 aims.
Oh man.
Woo! Spicy.
So good.
That's what 3 red, 9 white. It's something ridiculous.
Well, and you can do that now with Hunter if you give him Hunter.
No,
which you should be giving him.
Yeah, you should be taking Hunter for Tauntauns. Holy crap, that's a lot of good stuff.
Which is why that deploy the garrison card is so good against Tauntauns, because you get an aim from that. There's a good chance that Tauntauns are wounded, so you're going to get that second aim from Hunter. If you can get that range 2 shot, and take an aim action, like you said, you're throwing 11 dice, and each aim rerolls 4 of them. So
you're probably going to get a few more hits.
Yeah, I was actually doing the math in my head earlier for this because I was thinking about Krennic Bosk as a Tauntaun counter. And yeah, you're going to get probably like 9 hits with that pool.
So you could even play some other games too. If you on the Death Troopers, right? If we were to put the comms relay on them with aggressive tactics, you could hand the comm off to, like, let's say a sniper. You know what I mean? And so now you're able to start handing out surge. I mean, you could do. There's so many combos.
How about short troopers? They have target 1, so they get a free aim when you give them an order. So comms relay that aim to the shores.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh man, that's rough.
And then if you set up, so we talked in our coordinate episode, we talked about setting up like a coordinate chain with shores where you give comms relay to the mortars also, and you use multiple shores. So shore number 1 gets an order from the entourage comms relay, gives an order to mortar number 1, which passes that order to shore number 2, which gives it to mortar number 2, which passes that order to shore number 3. So yeah, that's an expensive combo. Like, shores are not super cheap,
right?
But the shore mortar combo, if you're not buying any upgrades or anything on the shores, is I think 16 points cheaper than 2 DLTs. So
I like the shores E-Web too. E-Web, Kyle, it's a good one.
Yeah, I guess.
Don't worry, Kyle. I'm going to put together a real good E-Web list.
Okay.
No, E-Webs are great. You got Sentinel now. You got Crit Surge. Like, who cares about Agile, man? I'm rolling 4 crits. Get wrecked. Like, come on.
Well, and that barrage generator. Tauntauns hate suppression.
Of course.
So.
Yeah, they hate it.
Ooh, E-Webs making a comeback. All right. Anyways, moving on. Smoke grenades. That's our last one.
These are okay. I guess they're good.
Grenades.
They're good for I was gonna say they're good for battle droids, except battle droids can't take grenades.
Yep.
So it's like, well, what's the heckin' point if they can't do that?
So for people that don't know, there's 6 points. When you toss it, you add smoke 1, which is place a smoke token within range 1 and in line of sight of your unit leader. And then smoke tokens, basically every mini in a unit must be entirely within range 1 of a smoke token to benefit from its effect.
But they improve cover, right? They don't say light cover, They improve your cover. So if you're standing in a light forest and you can spend an action to pop smoke and you'll get heavy, which is nice, right? But you have to spend an action to do it.
Yep.
Well, and if you're firing out of it, you're giving your opponent the same cover.
Yes.
So I could see this, like, if you're taking, the problem is the units that this is useful on are not at the moment terribly competitive. Like if you're taking full commando units, this would be good because they get low profile, right?
Right, and their
So you
sharpshooter
throw some
one.
smoke in front of them, right? And they're sharpshooter one.
Right.
But it's 6 points. It costs an action. I don't know. I could see this being useful on tables that don't have a lot of terrain, but I feel like generally it's better to just save the 6 points than use the terrain on the table.
Like, I guess you could do something silly like pop it in front of your snipers, so then maybe your snipers could get some better angles, so and getting people out of cover, and then, you know what I mean? Then it would be cover 1 but reduced, and then the snipers would have cover 2 because
another unit they're good on is full scouts. Same thing.
Yeah.
Right. But I think you're typically like not having trouble finding good cover for your snipers anyway.
Right. Well, yeah, right. And it's just a waste of activations for whoever's dumping the grenades, right? So
right.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it's just interesting. Just interesting things you can do. I'm sure, like with a lot of these, like we're thinking of these, but there's always somebody that comes along with some other crazy idea, right? That everyone's like, oh yeah, yeah. Why didn't I see that? That was really good.
My thought would be to take a naked squad and just put smokes on them, and then they're like the smoke battalion or whatever. They just walk around smoking whatever needs to be smoked. I don't know.
They're my favorite battalion. Can you please play
battalion?
Please just play that list. I want to see it. Just smoking whatever that needs to be smoked around on this battlefield.
Yep. Smoke break.
Yep. Smoke break.
What is this, a union chop?
Oh, jeez. Okay.
I do think, like, if you're using this, you got to bring some cotton to your table because, you know, you can't just throw a little token down there.
Yeah. You got to bring the full 3D, fully crafted tabletop solution.
Right. That's what cotton was made for.
Yeah. Don't get it twisted. That's what it was made for.
Right. Well, you know what? I think it's about time we move into exploration.
Let's go exploring with Notorious Scoundrels.
All right. Welcome to Notorious Scoundrels Go Exploring. Tell us, Kyle, what would you like to explore today?
I would like to explore a very old man.
Good. Good.
That sounded so weird.
Did it?
It did.
I want to explore a very old
man. And so I did on Friday night. I explored a very old man.
We're speechless.
And let me tell you, he pushed all the right buttons in all the right places.
Notorious Scoundrels After Dark.
So that old man is Emperor Palpatine, Sheev Palpatine.
A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one.
All right. Seriously, so I played. I think that he is. So we talked about this a little bit last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago. He's a good counter to aggressive rebel units, specifically Tauntauns, Luke, and Sabine. Between the guard, that you can double tap with pull the strings and give into your anger, and just his lightning. He does a good job of dealing with all of those things. Riha also, R1, also demonstrated that he can hold his own against traditional efficiency gun lines when played correctly.
Because R1's a god. That's why. He is
the Palpatine master.
Yeah.
So I actually consulted him for advice on what to run and how to do it. I played Casey Garnanina on Friday night. with Palpatine. He played like a double bounty hybrid thing. It went pretty well. I was pleasantly. It was one of those things where like it's a combination of like everything going your way and then also the dice being hot, and you start like apologizing because it's
There's just like nothing your opponent can do. You're just rolling rocks. The avalanche is burying him. You're just like helpless.
Yeah, it was
looking on.
Yeah, and so Casey is a great opponent. He's very mechanically sound. Punishes mistakes and makes very few. So it was a tight game up until Palpatine roasted everything.
It was a tight game until I kicked his ass.
Well, so like Palpatine has this ability to take either like a close game or like a losing situation, and just in the space of one activation, turn it into like, oh, this game's over.
He just buries your opponent unmercifully.
Yeah, so it was one of those like dream Palpatine scenarios where you manage to get the guard in melee, like on the last activation of the previous turn, and then you play it, and now you will die. Fry like 3 to 4 units, and then pull the strings on the guard, and then double tap with them and kill like 2 more things.
You play give into your anger, cackle maniacally, and then next round throw down as a 1 pip, and like the ground opens beneath your opponent, like swallows them up. Like,
yeah, I mean, and that's the classic R1 tactic, right?
Exactly.
And that's exactly what he did against me at Worlds. Yeah. As the give into your anger, delete a unit or 2, followed by
now you'll die.
And it's a great like a 1-2 punch. Now, the catch with Palpatine is if you mess that up, at least with the list that R1 runs and that I was running, because it was very similar to his, you've only got 3 DLTs in that list. And then you also have snows, but like you have your threats are all very close range, right? Like you've got guard, your primary threats are guard, snows, and Palpatine himself. So if you cannot reach your opponent, or you get a situation where you take that 1-2 swing and you miss, you've only got 3 stormtroopers, basically. So you are not going to win a gunfight.
No.
So it's definitely like a little bit of an all-in, somewhat aggressive list, but it was really fun. I'm going to mess around with him a little more. I think that he's well positioned actually in the current meta with Tauntauns running everywhere. But that said, he's also very difficult to play. I think I got lucky, it was a combination of getting lucky between the hot dice and positioning and stuff, at least on Friday. And I know that you need like 10 or more games with Palpatine to really play him properly. So it seems very unlikely I'll get that before Nova, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't considering it.
I just go for it, man. Like, I bet people like, I'll just tell you this, okay? So I played a Palpatine the other day, and I literally forgot that Give Into Your Anger exists. And I died.
God.
Okay? Because he's just so uncommon nowadays.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. There's a little bit, you could see the same thing with Sabs, where so few people play them. Now, those players that do play them are extremely skilled at what they do, but like people don't have reps in against Sabs, and people don't have reps in against Palpatine. So you kind of forget, even if you played him before. Like I made this comment, when R1 kicked my butt at Worlds, he did the old like Give Into Your Anger, snow, double tap with pull the strings, and deleted 2 Rebel Trooper units. And I was like, I legitimately forgot that snows could move that far. Because I haven't played against Palpatine and I haven't played against snows recently. So people will forget how threatening, those 1-2 punches
Snows that move 3 times is pretty good.
Right. That's actually really far. So, you do it and you do a last first with them. They can get across the map much quicker than you think. So, it's, you get a little bit of surprise factor. So we'll see. It's I'm much more comfortable with almost any Rebel list. I will probably end up putting Luke Skywalker on the table again, like I always do. But
don't do it.
See. It's a good time.
That's surprising.
Will eat you.
What's that? What's surprising, Jay?
I thought I thought for sure you would have gone with your Invader League list.
What's that, Veers Bosk?
Mm-hmm.
So I've been going through a little bit of an identity crisis because the list that is my playstyle, which is like gunline efficiency, that's essentially what I've been running some version of for the first year of the game, gets countered pretty hard by Tauntauns.
Yeah.
So as much as I am still considering that, and I know that it will do well against any matchup that does not feature Tauntauns, I also am worried about that matchup. So if I can bring, it's not an all-comers list anymore. It was an all-comers list for Invader League. It's not that anymore. I'm pretty confident that I could, do well against a lot of things that aren't the current hotness. But if Nova was a month ago, definitely I would be playing that. But I don't think we're in that place right now. So
yeah, and I think I asked this off air, but doesn't it feel good now that you guys are talking about being scared of a rebel list?
Well, I think there has.
For how long have we been talking about Empire lists being scary?
Well,
right?
I think actually rebel lists have always been certain rebel lists have always been scary.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are, we've talked about this before. There's less variety of units that are competitive for rebels, but that doesn't mean that rebels are bad. There's plenty of great rebel units out there.
Yeah,
and I like the fact that we're talking about being scared of rebel list because it also means potentially the end of the pure like vanilla efficiency gunline, and I think that's great. I think it's great that Tauntauns are shaking up the meta. I think it's great that Luke Sabine, are shaking it up, maybe with a little bit less splash. But Veers Bosk is also disadvantaged versus a Luke Sabine list. So, I think it's great that we're talking about scary rebel lists. I think it's great that we're talking about efficiency gun lines being disadvantaged against something. I would have, liked more than a few weeks to prep for my playstyle being invalidated, but
yeah. I want to say no, it's not invalid, but never mind.
I mean, David, you've been casting a lot of team league games. You've seen what
oh my god, yeah.
Lines. Do you want to?
We're supposed to talk about Palpatine, but I guess we can't escape it. The Tauntauns pulls back in like a black hole.
Well, they're the reason that I'm considering Palpatine.
Well, yeah. So Tauntauns versus Gunline is not a pretty picture. I mentioned it earlier with Sabine in the triple dodge situation. Like if you have linebacker units that they just run away from or around, and they get in there, and if you roll 4 hits, it's going to go to 6 with Ram, and it's going to like knock something off the board, generally speaking. Empire has a bit of an easier time because your saves can bail you out. Rebel saves are less likely to bail them out. So, I mean, it's still pretty bad. Like losing, most of a squad to a Tauntaun charge is horrible for anybody. And without, some ability to resist them in melee or some way to trap them in the approach, either with, range 4 or some ability to suppress them to limit their actions, you are dead meat if you let them touch your gun line. So you need to have some kind of ability to deal with it. And Palpatine has your back, bro, because Palpatine can use his lightning in melee, and Palpatine has Royal Guards that can double tap, and Palpatine can give him all kinds of goodies now with surge tokens, and guards would love Tauntauns to approach because guards are awesome in melee. That's their favorite place to be, is melee. Tenacious guards roll a crap load of dice, and they'd love to be able to aim and charge and have a surge token to fix their dice further. So Palpatine's pretty good. Plus he surges crit, and he's suppressive, which is even better.
Yeah, Tauntauns hate suppression. So just to piggyback a little bit on the Tauntauns versus Gunline discussion, besides like the raw damage that they do in melee with RAM, the reasons that there's such a problem for Gunline is your units tend to be relatively close together, or at least in a line, right? That's why it's called a gunline. So they can typically suppress multiple units with their speed 3 move and relentless and displacement. But also they can kind of move, like good Tauntaun players will essentially move from one already activated unit to another. Like if you're buried in melee, you just wait until a unit somewhere along that gun line has activated, and then you do a move, charge something that hasn't activated, and then do another move because you disengage and tie yourself up with that activated unit, and then they can't withdraw that unit. If you don't have access to force push, there's no way to get that Tauntaun out to where you can shoot them. So you could try and punch them, I guess, but at that point they have 2, maybe 3 dodge tokens if you use No Time for Sorrows. So like, how productive is that really going to be? So that's why they tear up gun lines so effectively, is because they're very good at putting themselves in positions where their targets cannot withdraw and you can't shoot them. So, a list that is built around shooting things obviously has issues.
Yeah, it sure does.
Which, like I said, I think that's fine. I think a quote unquote efficiency gunline, 2 characters, 6 core, 5 to 6 core, a couple snipers, maybe special forces in there is still very effective, but I think they definitely have problems against Tauntauns.
The key is to try to handle them before they hit your gun line. I think if you wait until they hit you, it's too late.
Yep. Now, we talked earlier about Krennic Bosk. That is a list where it's very doable to hit them before they hit your gun line.
And you'll have Hunter DTs and Hunter Bosk, hopefully.
Right. You have two hard-hitting range 4 units that have Hunter and don't care as much about dodges either, because they are crit machines like Bosk, or because they get so many hits that, Death Trooper shot, you're going to get 6 or 7 hits and 2 dodges. All right, you're still going to kill a Tauntaun.
Yep.
So that is I think a example of a quote unquote gunline list that still does okay against Tauntauns. And that's why it's on my list of options at the moment. But generally speaking, like that's a long way of answering your question, Jay, about why I'm not playing my Vader League list.
No, I appreciate it. I think it's just interesting. I mean, that's why we all love this game, right? Because it seems like every couple months it changes.
Yeah, which is great. Like, I'm super comfortable with that list, but the meta isn't. So
yeah, and then as Clone Wars comes out, God knows what else is going to happen, right? So it's just going to keep getting better and better.
New puzzle to solve.
Yeah, it's great. I love it.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, boys. Well, what do you think? Wrapping it up?
Yeah. Yeah, I think.
Any final thoughts?
Oh, Tauntauns are really good, man.
I like how we didn't have Tauntauns anywhere in the show notes for this episode, and we still talked about it for like 30 minutes.
Gee, we shoehorned them in every segment. Yep. No problems.
Yep.
Oh.
So, for those of you listening, watch out for Tauntauns. They're a thing.
Yeah.
They are a thing. And I'm super excited for Nova. Rebels, please sign up for the narrative event.
Yes.
And players, your lists are due on Thursday, so don't forget that.
All right. Well, let's sign off. I'm Jay.
All right.
I'm David.
I'm Kyle. We are the Notorious Scoundrels.
You want to do that one again? Do it one more time.
And we are the Notorious Scoundrels.
There we go.
3 Tauntauns.
Join us next week for another episode of The Notorious Scoundrels.
This has been a 5th Trooper production.